I don't even want to say we're marketing to people right now. We're helping people. It's how can we be helpful and be a resource and be useful?
Welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast, hosted by Bernie Borges. This is the podcast for the modern marketer who wants to hear from their peers in the trenches and the occasional analyst or rockstar influencer, sharing strategies and tactics about what's working in modern marketing. Be sure to listen to the end of each episode for Bernie's summary and takeaways so you can plan your next move in your own modern marketing journey.
Hey there. Welcome to episode 277 of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. I'm Bernie Borges, CMO of Vengreso, and your host. Hey, thanks for listening. Hey, my guest on this episode is Meredyth Jensen, Senior Vice President, Corporate Marketing and Brand Communications at RGP. Meredith, welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Happy to be here, Bernie. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Meredith. Well, I think we should begin with sharing with our listener a little bit of the backstory, because you and I have been working on scheduling this podcast for a couple of months now. But, these times call for, as you like to say, agility and curveballs and unexpected happenings. And so we have to just kind of go with the flow. But we are here. And thank you for your flexibility, Meredith, because I'm excited to talk to you about a topic that I think is on the mind of, I think, all marketers globally as we all are living through this time of pandemic. And that is, how do we market when we're trying to market to drive growth, right? You were brought on to drive growth. So let's begin, Meredith, with where I like to begin always, and that is the introduction to your company, RGP, and of course, your role there.
I've been with RGP since August of 2017, and it's been an incredible ride. This is a company that has a global footprint across North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. We have a Big Four heritage. We actually were a spinoff of Deloitte and been in business for a little over 20-something years. So we're proud of our Big Four heritage, but even more proud of the fact that we really were the first to market in this different type of what we call sort of our human agility focused staffing model. And it's really not just staffing now. We've moved into project consulting and advisory level work. So it's not a pure play staffing form from where we started. And we really consider ourselves human capital partners for our clients. And those clients include 88 of the Fortune 100, not too shabby. And what is really not too shabby to hear is that, so they spun out of Deloitte, had a great book of business back in the late 90s, really doing well. And then, of course, global recession hits, everyone's getting impacted. And then in the last several years, beginning of 2017, company went through some restructuring and decided that they were on a very aggressive growth path to get to $1 billion in annual revenue by 2022. And in order to do that, they needed to have a true modern marketing engine, a marketing function in RGP, which they'd never had before. So I know when we first started talking about having you invite me to speak on your show, I think you might have, fell off your metaphorical chair when I told you they never had a modern marketing function until
no kidding.
2017. But that's a testament to how incredible the relationships that they've developed with those clients. I mean, again, 88 of the Fortune 100 are longstanding global clients of RGP. I don't need to name names, but and we work with small to medium businesses too. But it just goes to show, it was really hard to say no when I knew what I was walking into. And it goes back to sort of the last, 20 plus years of my career. I would say in the last decade, my real focus and delight is both rewarding and challenging opportunities that I faced, where I've gone into organizations that are going through these massive growth and transformation activities and initiatives, or they're just dealing with a very critical inflection point in their business. And they realize they need to use marketing as a growth driver and that lever to enable sales versus just viewing it as a traditional cost center to the business. And so I've had so much delight in working with companies that view marketing as a potential growth driver and asset to the strategy of the enterprise. And that's where RGP and I just immediately connected. And I knew that I could make an impact here. And I feel like I have been.
I'll tell you where I want to go next, Meredith. You shared with me I'm not sure if you called it 3 pillars or 3 parts of, the foundation to your approach to modern marketing. I'd love for you to explain what they are and kind of unpack them.
Sure. Yeah. And it's almost sort of a personal / professional approach in the last decade when I've gone into these organizations, large global enterprises like RGP, some even larger than that, to smaller firms. And really this sort of three-pillared approach has been centered around sort of 3Ds. It starts with, I like to go in and design what that modern marketing engine looks like for that organization. And it's not a one size fits all, depending on where I've been. But the beauty is I've been able to take lessons learned and move that to the next organization I've gone to. And so when I go in, I generally do what any hopefully smart marketer does. And you immediately align with sales, and you also find out what's working and what isn't, what they have done, what they haven't done. And you start developing an approach to understanding the buyers. You build out personas and all the usual nuggets of inspiration, voice the customer, et cetera. And then you figure out, okay, this is how I'm going to design the right mix of modern marketing for this organization. And then from there, I develop it. So that's sort of the second D in the pillar. And to develop it is just you execute religiously on the plan. And then from there, I kind of call it, I disappear. And then I tend to go to the next challenge. And that may be moving into a new role, which I've already done at RGP. I started out as vice president of revenue marketing, actually, when they first hired me, and then expanded my role when I worked on leading a global rebrand for the firm. And now I report directly to the CEO in my expanded role as head of corporate marketing and brand communications. So sometimes when I say I disappear and go to the next challenge, it means I move on to a new opportunity with a new organization. But in this case, again, it's been both equal parts rewarding and challenging being, a growth driver in an organization that's never really viewed marketing other than, the group that produces the cool branded swag and designs PowerPoint decks. So it's been quite a shift.
Sure. Okay. So let's come back to the rebranding. What's the why behind the rebranding initiative? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd like to unpack that as well, because again, a company as successful as RGP, you've already shared some of the accolades, some of the success factors. What really drove the rebranding, and kind of talk a little bit about like what you did to achieve that?
Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite projects to date at RGP. And I've always been passionate about brand. And I think now more than ever, when you think about what's happened in the world with COVID-19, it's the brands that are currently thriving and cutting through all the disruption that's going on that are going to continue to be successful. And with RGP, you could talk to a different leader in a different functional role in the company, and they'd all have a different story about who we were and what our brand is. And as you know, as a CMO, that's the kiss of death because then you've got a lot of mixed messages out in the marketplace. And so we decided that it was time to invest in getting a really good brand story and deciding how do we want to tell our story, because it's a good one. And the fact that we created, in many ways, what everyone calls the gig economy now, that was our model back in the 90s, except our model is pretty unique in the fact that it's an employee model. It's not just gig contractors. So every single consultant is an employee of RGP. And that's very unique and certainly valued, especially at this time when unemployment is so high. So we realized, we've got a lot of competitors in the professional services space. And it doesn't hurt that, sure, we spun out of Deloitte, but we're a very different company.
What's your approximate headcount?
If you include all of our employees, consultants, everyone, we're close to 4,000 employees worldwide.
Okay.
Yeah, not too small. And what's a little bit unique, most professional services firms are privately held. We've been publicly traded on NASDAQ. This is our 20 years since our IPO this year. And we're about 707 million in annual revenue right now. So we still got a steep climb to get to that $1 billion mile marker. But part of it is just learning how to tell our story, who we are and why we exist as a business and what our purpose is. And it kind of goes back to our conversation about agility. And we're a human capital firm. And so we started asking our clients, you've got a lot of options of consulting firms to work with. What is it about us that differentiates us? And what continued to come back was just the fact that, as we all know now, where everyone's using virtual tools, we're recording on a virtual collaboration tool for the podcast. Technology has changed the way we do business at such an accelerated pace. But at the end of the day, our clients just aptly put it by saying that RGP is more human. And what does that mean in theory? That's great. And we even use, to the power of human as our tagline. And in some ways, it's sort of a toast to the humans of RGP. But it really is more about this chemistry that we create and finding the right talent at the right time to engage with our clients on their transformation initiatives that they're going through. And so how do we connect those clients and execute that business transformation and keep it intrinsically human? So it's not about all the tools and systems and processes and things like that, which is very important. People are also part of that transformation equation. And that's kind of where we keep it real. And we really consider ourselves sort of what we call the experts in human agility.
I find that fascinating because you are in a professional services industry that is very competitive. As you said, the company spun off from Deloitte, and it's a crowded space, Meredith. So how did you achieve this differentiation of being more human? I can't imagine that RGP is the only company that attempts to do business with a human element, right? So how did you actually achieve that level of recognition, that level of affinity from your customer base to the point where you can actually brand around that?
That's such a great question, because we had a lot of folks when we were starting to roll out the new brand positioning and platform and messaging, how do we tell this story? But even if you take a step back, agility is really everything that is about our business. But a lot of companies can claim to be agile, and frankly, maybe they're more agile than RGP. But at the end of the day, it's what matters to the clients and why they choose us. And when our clients consistently said, you are more human, you care about the work, not just working for me, you're working with me. And it seems very cliche, but we've got examples. I'll give you just a quick story just to illustrate this. We have a consultant that was working with one of our top Fortune 100 clients on a project, and the client was really struggling to show ROI with a particular transformation initiative they were working on. And our consultant just didn't even have to do this. It wasn't part of the scope. Helped that client figure out using a certain software that they knew how to use. And the client didn't know how to use that particular software. And the consultant just kind of spent a day showing the client, here's how you can show X, Y, and Z for the return on this investment. And here's some data and analytics that you can prove and share with your leadership team to show the value that you've created on this initiative. And it was that kind of thing where it wasn't even within scope, that the consultant just did it. That's the loyalty that we inject into the business. That's human chemistry, right? That's just our consultants caring enough about the client's success. We kind of joke human chemistry. That seems a little bit fluffy, but we really know from feedback from our clients that our consultants aren't just, this person's available for the next 6 months to work on your project. Great, let's just throw them in there to that organization. No, we take the time to really invest in, is this going to be a right fit? Are they going to blend in with that culture? You can't force culture change. The consultant has to work really well. And that's the one thing we know, is that our clients find that our consultants, the day they show up, they can hit the ground running and they're embedded in the culture. And it's a unique thing that we bring to the table that is our secret sauce, frankly. And those are soft skills you can't teach, no matter how hard you try.
So Meredith, where I want to go next is something that we were discussing before we pressed the little magic record button. You and I were talking about how, as I said at the opening of this recording, that we had to reschedule this a few times because of COVID and the impact that it had on our schedule. Even myself, this is only the second episode since taking what I'll call a COVID hiatus from podcasting, just because we've had to reshift priorities, and you know the drill. But that's where I want to go with the conversation, is how has COVID impacted the way you're doing growth marketing?
I think the best analogy is, COVID-19 came at us like a wrecking ball. I don't think anyone was really expecting it to have the gravity that it has across the world. And so that just simply was an opportunity, in some ways a catalyst for growth for my marketing team, to accelerate some transformations that were already underway, and in some areas forcing us to have to shift and be more agile in totally new areas altogether. One of the things that's always been a priority in the last fiscal year for us is just being digital first in everything we do, with our content, with all of our approaches across the firm, frankly. And so with COVID, all of a sudden everyone's online. So you're not going to print out a content anymore. It's all about, what can we get in front of clients? What can we do to help sales? What can we help other parts of the organization to be more nimble? And so we really quickly put together, in the first few weeks when COVID hit North America, we developed what, for lack of a simplistic term, what I'm calling like our business continuity content hub. on our website, and we put together a tiger team of subject matter experts and practice leaders across the global firm. And in 10 business days, had an entire thought leadership microsite up and running with what I call friction-free content. We had business continuity checklists, business resiliency playbooks, things for clients and prospects to immediately download. And we've had thousands of downloads since we launched this site. I don't even want to say we're marketing to people right now. We're helping people. It's how can we be helpful and be a resource and be useful? Air quote marketing can come later. It's not about hype and marketing RGP. It's about how can we help our clients who are either thriving, because some industries are, and then some are really struggling. And we work across almost every industry sector. So how can we be creating value for them? And there's nothing more human than that. And when you think about, Bernie, what's happening in the world, whether this is just an inconvenience for you because you're not going into an office every day and you have to work and have kids at home or whatever, or else you're really dealing with this on a more tragic level with COVID. I mean, at the end of the day, this is stripping down the most basic human needs, which is connection. And that human connection, again, is so rooted in who RGP is. And I found it really eye-opening in the last 7-8 weeks since sheltering in place, how many organizations are using the word human connection in their messaging right now. And I thought, oh, that's our DNA. We've been doing that for a long time. So in some ways, we haven't had to pivot our model or our thinking at all because, one of our core attributes is being empathetic and being humble. And so if we can find ways to provide relevant information, content that's meaningful, that's helping create solutions for challenges that our clients are facing, then this is an opportunity to demonstrate that in a really authentic way.
Yeah, I love that. And earlier you said that part of your model is to understand the sales model, what they need. And so how has sales been impacted? I don't mean revenue, closing business, but I mean the sales team. How are they integrating into this approach of being helpful and not necessarily going out to close deals? I'm not suggesting that they wouldn't or shouldn't be closing deals, but in terms of shifting their own mindset in the COVID era, have you seen any change there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's one of the first things that our team immediately rallied to support was, the sales folks still have their own quotas and goals and things that they're required to do in terms of number of outreach and the usual expectations there. And that doesn't stop no matter a global pandemic or not. We're a business. We're not a nonprofit. We're still expected to generate revenue. So the point is, first thing we did before we even built out that thought leadership platform on the website is let's help script some email outreach that we can give them. Let's help rewrite what would normally be a typical salesy approach. That does get people to follow up and schedule meetings with you. It's about helping folks right now. It's about demonstrating empathy. I was joking with one of our heads of revenue, it's like empathy is going to be a verb right now. We're going to make it an action word. It's not about, I want to sell you, a finance transformation project right now. It's about what are you dealing with where we might be able to help. And that's exactly what we did. So in the outreach and email scripts and other sales enablement content that we created, that was an opportunity for a lot of our sales folks to hear back from clients that weren't responding to other outreach in the past. And I think it's just because it wasn't like, oh, I want to have you meet the head of this practice or talk about a particular solution or service. I just want to know, how are you doing? Is there anything we can do to help? And the beauty of our agile business model is like we were working with a major client in Tokyo on a finance transformation project when all of Japan shut down. We were able to quickly convene the right consultants who had the same level of expertise out of our Parsippany, New Jersey region and continue the project without any latency issues. Those examples are just one of many, but that's part of, again, that human chemistry, knowing that client in Tokyo, knowing what they needed to be successful, how we could come in and help. We didn't change the structure or scope or anything like that to complicate matters. We just wanted to help them be successful during this time.
Dale Carnegie said, how do you win friends and influence people? I mean, the same principles apply in conducting business, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, there's no difference.
There isn't. And I was talking to somebody the other day who spent their whole career in consumer B2C marketing. And I used to kind of joke, oh, I hate the whole B2B, B2C. It's all, we're still dealing with humans at the end of the day. But I may take that thought back because I was thinking about B2B, and it tends to be there's a lot more risk mitigation and due diligence that happens for B2B buyers. But even more so, it's more personal. if you buy a product from, a retailer, you can get a refund if you don't like it, or you can return
Right.
it. It's not that easy. If you're buying a major business transformation consulting
Yeah.
project with someone, or if you're doing an implementation of a massive software, it's a very different animal. And so again, it goes back to, it is so much more about personalization. And I know that's been a hot topic in marketing for the last 12 to 18 months. And I can't imagine that changing, because it is all about how do we continue to personalize our outreach and help enable our clients, customers, prospects to navigate this storm. And we are all riding out the storm together. And we're just probably a lot of us are in different boats right now, where we stand.
And this storm is going to be with us for a while. So
It is.
we have to really adapt and adopt this mindset of being helpful, not with a short-term perspective, but with a long-term perspective, because it's not going to go away anytime soon, at least from the crystal ball that I have, Meredith, and everything that I'm seeing. This is going to be with us for a while.
It is. There's a great quote that I love by the old business management guru, Peter Drucker, that's come to mind. And
Yeah.
been in conversation with my team lately where Drucker said the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think that is just such gospel truth right now. I mean, we have such an opportunity as brand marketers in particular to really think about how we want to shape our brand voice in a really disruptive marketplace right now, where people are hurting. Our clients, many of them are thriving, but many are struggling. And where can we be the voice to help them create the future that's going to be successful for them, that in turn helps us grow our own business?
Well said. And I think that's a great segue for me to do my recap, where I'm going to summarize the key points that we discussed, and then I'll ask you to elaborate on anything you'd like to elaborate on. And then we'll ask you for your digital contact information, and then we'll bring the episode to a wrap. We began our conversation with your brief introduction to RGP, a company that's been around for about 20 years, spun off from Deloitte, providing consulting and advisory services, servicing 88 of the Fortune 100 companies. Very, very impressive. And that you're really focused on growth, driving towards that $1 billion mark by 2022 was the goal that was set. You're, I think, at 700 and change in million. You're a publicly traded company. And you yourself, Meredith, have been a marketer for 20 plus years, and you love to focus on growth marketing. And you were brought into RGP for that specific purpose. We talked about your approach to it, the 3Ds, design, really just design the framework. What's the modern marketing engine look like? What should it look like? And then go execute it. And then the third D is to kind of disappear into some other role, as you have experienced yourself at the company at RGP, where you were brought into one role and now you're serving into this other role. We talked about the why of the rebrand, that you did it in June of 2019, not quite 2 years ago. You were really focused on one brand story that can be portrayed across all 4,000 employees across the globe. But you started by asking clients, why did you choose RGP? And what you kept hearing over and over again was that your company is truly, truly human. You don't just work for us, you work with us. And that you basically were told that you're more human than your competitors. And a lot of that has to do with your agility, meaning the people's ability to be agile in the moment with clients. We talked about the impact of COVID. You said it came like a wrecking ball. And I think just about anybody listening to this can relate to that. But it's also accelerated transformation in many ways. And so one of the things that it's done for you and for many of us is to become digital first. And one of the examples that you shared was how you set up this business continuity content hub, where you assembled practice leaders across the globe, and you created this thought leadership content hub. And I think you said it in just 10 days. You just put it all together in 10 days, which is pretty impressive. And it's all about providing friction-free content that's really focused on helping your customers, helping the marketplace. And it just is another example of how the company is just really maximizing that human connection. You made the point, Meredith, that we all long for that human connection. And I think one of the things that we've all realized, especially as we're sheltering in place, is that we miss it. So to the extent that you can deliver that to the marketplace, just really fuels your brand of being human. We talked about how sales is impacted by this at RGP, and just like most organizations, they still have a quota to make. They still have a responsibility. But one of the things that you've done is provide some scripting of email content so that they can do their outreach with an empathetic tone so that they can really portray that empathy that is so important in this time. And you gave an example of how a client project you were working on in Japan, where the country shut down, how the project moved to New Jersey and just kind of didn't skip a beat, just handled everything, didn't impact, the relationship. It just didn't skip a beat and just moved to the New Jersey office. And then the closing point that we just discussed before the recap was that your focus really is on shaping the brand in this disruptive environment, meaning we're in this disruptive environment. Like, we don't have a choice. So how do you shape the brand to really live the brand, be the brand on a global basis? You're not quite 1 year into it, but also sort of embrace, and those are my words, not necessarily your words, embrace the fact that we are in this disruptive environment. So how do we take the brand and be human in this disruptive environment and utilize all the assets and what you said, and I love this, the DNA of the company, which is just natural to the company. It's the way you operate, it's the way you do business. So how do you do that on a daily basis so that you are doing it in a disruptive environment? I think the examples that you shared and the model that you've shared that you've put in place is a great testimony to that. So I'll leave my summary there, Meredith, and ask you, is there anything that you would like to add?
I can't imagine adding anything else. You've made me sound brilliant. Thank you.
Well, I don't want to say it was easy because these summaries never come easy for me, but it was certainly easy to have you sound brilliant because you've got a very impressive career. And my only remorse is that we didn't have another 30 minutes to keep the conversation going. So, Meredith, where would you like to send my listener to connect with you online and just connect with you and learn more about what you've got going on at RGP?
My favorite place right now still is tried and true LinkedIn. I've met so many great people, including you, through LinkedIn. And so I'd love for folks to connect with me there. And you can just find me on LinkedIn/Meredyth Jensen.
Fantastic. And my listener knows that we will link that up in our show notes page at vengreso.com. So, Meredith, first of all, thank you for your flexibility, your agility, your willingness to reschedule with me 3 or more times over the past couple of months. It was well worth it. I've so enjoyed this conversation. Just thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Thanks so much. The pleasure is really all mine.
Hey, that's a wrap for this episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. If you're not subscribed yet, I invite you to hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast player. We're available on all the popular podcast listening channels. And hey, I'd love it if you would give the Modern Marketing Engine podcast a rating or review in Apple Podcasts. That really helps others to discover it. We publish a show notes page for every episode with links to the resources that were mentioned during the interview. Just visit our podcast page at vengreso.com, and that's VENGRESO. And remember, just one S in Vengreso. Hey, while you're there, sign up to get the podcast delivered to your inbox each week. And be sure to check out the Modern Selling Podcast, hosted by our CEO, Mario Martinez Jr. Hey, I hope that you'll tune in again next week for another inspiring interview to help you thrive on your modern marketing journey.